Whether you want more innovation more easily, you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead teams today. Joining me is Phil Hornby. Phil is a highly experienced product leader, coach, and technologist with over 20 years in the industry. His career spans various roles, including product management, project management, operations, development, sales, marketing. Is there anything left?
Maybe. I don't know.
UX, I guess.
Didn't work in manufacturing. I'll give you that.
Across diverse sectors like software as a service, Internet of Things, and automotive. Phil is a regular speaker at product events and co-host of the Talking Roadmaps YouTube channel and podcast. He's also writing a book encapsulating his philosophy and practical insights. Phil has helped thousands of individuals across hundreds of companies think clearly, make strong decisions, and take powerful action that drives high-impact outcomes. He combines technical, business, and human skills to empower teams and leaders to develop complex solutions that elegantly solve customer problems at scale, always emphasizing collaboration, context-driven leadership, and continuous learning. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Wow, I've just heard you read back something I wrote a while ago, and it's like, well, it actually sounds quite impressive. I've done a few things, and wow. You don't often reread things you write. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and teams have always been a core part of it.
And starting with the team that is you, when did you first recognize that integrating your whole self, bringing that into everything that you do, might be a valuable approach?
I don't think there's a single point that I can identify there. I can identify various different aspects, such as the first team I was part of, post-university, post-college. I very much treated them just as colleagues. But over the time, we worked together for 10-ish years. They became like family. And I know that's a cliche statement that people make, but we were a team of 35 people in the company as a whole. And when we all stopped working together because we were all closed down at the same time after being acquired and then you're kind of downsized, I missed them all. And we all kind of crystallized as a group and still are friends to this day. And that's going back 15 years now from when we kind of all stopped working together. And that relationship there and kind of not realizing that I kind of put a bit of a barrier between me and them is one of those aspects, whereas I didn't need to. On the other hand, I do think it's all right to hold a little bit of yourself back, to keep some of yourself private. However, you've got to always be authentic. If you're not being your real self, that's just hard work and stressful. And if you're constantly working to manage the public persona or the persona you're playing to the audience and not just being you and embracing who you are, that's just hard work. And that's something I've seen throughout lots of times. I'm a big fan of a technique called Belbin team roles. In fact, a certified practitioner. And one of the strong sort of principles that Meredith Belbin kind of identified is being the greatest of your strengths, not the least of your weaknesses. And kind of things like that have resonated with me over the years. It's like, well, my greatest strengths tie into me being authentically me. I'm a fairly loud, gregarious character. You want something subtle, I'm probably not the person. That's okay. I'll have some more subtle, some more nuanced people around me that I can partner with that can deal with that side of things and deal with those situations that need that more directly, and having that self-awareness to say, maybe I'm a blunt instrument for this one. That's powerful. So I guess it's more that self-awareness and self-understanding that I've kind of picked up over the years, and knowing that just means I can bring my whole self to work. Like I've never been a fan of what I would argue is the false dichotomy of work and life. To me, work is part of life. And you get different fulfillment and different benefits from each of the different aspects of your life. There's a model called the Wheel of Life that I'm a big fan of in terms of another way of looking at balance. Now, you can put different factors on there, but sometimes it's physical elements or financial elements or learning or growth and these sorts of things. And finding that balance there is far more important to me. Sometimes you're going to get fulfillment from your work. Sometimes you get it from your personal relationships. Sometimes you get it from just you yourself. And knowing that it's okay that any of these aspects can come from any of those different aspects of your life. And so you might get tons of fulfillment from your work instead of a hobby. Like, yeah, I have hobbies, don't get me wrong. But I'm so lucky to be able to say that my work is my hobby. Like, I love every minute of every day that I'm working. So it doesn't feel like I'm working because it's me embracing that. And that's a privilege. The sort of work I do and the way I work enables that. But I worked hard to create that situation for me to be able to say that because I wanted to just be able to enjoy life. You know, if you spend on average 8 hours of your day, working and another 8 on what people would term life, sometimes, which includes doing all the chores and this sort of things. Like, well, let's maximize that really 16 hours of waking time and make all of that fulfilling as much as possible. Is, I guess, me embracing not just the bringing it to work, to life and to my role, but just bringing everything to everything.
180% everything you just said. It's so important to remember that being authentic doesn't have to mean sharing everything. And in fact, sharing everything, unless you're a person who wants to share everything, isn't being authentic because there's parts of things that you want to pull back. What is important is sharing, letting people know that things are going on. And you don't have to go farther than that.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as, hey team, got a lot going on right now. Most of it's not work. A little bit of it is. Don't want to go into a lot of details now. Want you to know I'm going to be distracted.
So true. I mean, and if you are a great team, like I have a collaborator that I work with a lot, and he's going through a bunch of health problems right now. And like we had a message exchange earlier today where he was thanking me for carrying more of the load on some of the projects we're dealing with. It's like, that's a team. That's, there'll be other times when you're carrying more of the load and it balances out. And heck, even if it doesn't, I don't care. I chose to partner with you. I chose to be a team. And therefore, that's okay. And I don't, as it happens, I know pretty much all the details in this context, but it's also all right if someone says they don't want to share. That safety to be able to say there's something going on is important, and knowing whether and being able to choose whether you share or whether you're going to feel then the pressure to share and is important. But there's also the opposite side as a leader. Spotting when someone isn't fully turning up and having the awareness to say, there's probably something going on there. Now, I don't need to probe, but also being ready to say, we're going to make sure they're looked after. Like maybe it's a subtle conversation with the rest of the team saying, there's some stuff going, I think there's some stuff going on with X. Maybe we should just kind of cover for them a little bit and give them a little bit of airspace, because we're a team. We're here together to look after each other and be successful together.
I like that. To me, it feels a little bit like it might be inflicting help on that person. What I would probably tend to do is go to that person and say, you seem a little distracted right now. How can I help? That way you let them know that you recognize that they're showing up differently, and you give them the opportunity to share as much or little as they want, and to let you know how they'd like you to help. And then, as you said, as a leader, it's important to keep watch over this. And if they keep showing up distracted and they keep not letting you, giving you ways to help them handle whatever's going on, then it's your responsibility to dig a little deeper, because their distraction is affecting the team. And you have a responsibility then to that person. You also have a responsibility to the rest of the team, and helping everyone work effectively, efficiently, all the adverbs that your particular team is optimizing for is as important as helping each person feel supported and loved.
And I reflect on your comment there about inflicting help, and you're right. There's not always the easy opportunity to go and have that conversation. So sometimes you have to be more proactive. Other times you can have that conversation. And sometimes these conversations are a lot easier to be had in person. I mean, I've been a remote worker since 2008. Like this way of working is normal to me. And I do find that sometimes a little bit more proactivity is needed in that context, because sometimes those harder conversations are even harder to have virtually.
Absolutely. And I still always bias towards letting the person know I see them and giving them an opportunity to tell me what they'd like.
Totally agree. I'm not disagreeing with that. Sometimes you can only give them that awareness, but you maybe not be able to go that next level.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Thinking about the responsibility to the team, sometimes you can be a bit more proactive. But every situation is different. Like, there's a reason why I say it depends 100 times a day.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I love working with people is that I'm never going to get it all figured out. There's always more to learn. And every situation is chock full of those new opportunities to learn something new.
Yeah. In fact, I think a few years ago, when as my career's pivoted over the years, I didn't consciously recognize it, but I subconsciously recognized that I was an engineer, and I was finding it easy. I was finding people harder, and that challenge was what attracted me. Hence, most of my work has ended up being more about people. Even as a product manager or a product leader, like, the reality is most of my work came back to people, and I loved that challenge because I think it's far more interesting. At least that's that for me, anyway.
Same. I say that I started out debugging code, and then I transitioned into debugging people, and now I help people debug themselves.
Yeah, love it.
It's just my own journey of realizing something's going on, inflicting help, and then we're doing it, then switching over to offering and inviting them to tell me how they'd like me to help. It's just part of why I am so vehement about not inflicting help, is because I know how much harm I did when I've done that, and when I still do it.
I mean, it's interesting. I'm reading a book right now, and I'm literally just trying to remember the title. It's called Helping, and it's very much about that social contract around offering and receiving help and so on. And it's I'm literally just towards the start, but I saw a good friend Christina Wadke shared about it recently. I thought if she thinks it's good, I'd have to go and read it, and it's just resonating with the conversation here.
Sounds like a great book. So everything we're talking about is building cultures where people feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they do. What do you explicitly do to help build these cultures?
Well, these days as a coach, I guess I'm more a little bit like yourself, helping people. I'm helping them do the debugging as opposed to doing it directly myself. But when I was a leader, I would always start by just helping people establish a relationship, like really simple stuff at a human level. One of my favorite onboarding techniques was to take anybody new on a tour of the business. And by that, I mean, literally, I would physically take them around all the sites and introduce them to everyone personally and tell each other just a little bit about each other. It's, a safe kind of nugget of information that they would kind of then, where it would give them something in common. And I remember one person when I was doing this, there were two people sat on two desks next to each other, and someone on the other desk sort of commented, I've sat next to this person for 20 years and you know more about them than me. It's like, I've made a conscious effort to build relationships. And the most amusing thing, at my core psychology, I am one of the most task-oriented people you will find. But I realized that the reality is that getting anything task-oriented done means working with people. And I realized that, therefore, I had to really embrace that people side of everything. And in the early days, it was very contrived. Like, I essentially kept a CRM about people and was like, this is this person, that's their wife's name, their husband's name, their child's name. They just went to high school, they've got this dog, etc., etc. But after a few years of doing that in a very contrived and very prescriptive, literally writing it down manner, it started to become second nature. It started to become, I just know this thing about people and I can help build relationships. And I would find those nuggets that I could use to build relationships. And then I could see how other people could find that initial connection. And as much as remote work is a big thing these days, like the human connection comes so much faster in person as well. So helping them get in person early on in their relationship, because it's so much harder to say no or ignore someone once you've seen the whites of their eyes in real life. And so, that, if you take that, just listen to my language there, it's saying no. Well, that's going back to that task-oriented nature of, well, we've got to get stuff done. We've got to work together. But let's grease the wheels and make it a better environment. But then it was things like, there's subtlety there. Well, I'm personally introducing people. That's essentially saying, this is one of my team or one of my family. Like, if you do something and you're helping them and you're working with them, that's the same as you're working with me. And okay, I'm a more senior person in the organization. I've got more political capital. I'm saying they can take out my political bank. Like, I'm giving them, my backing tacitly by being in the room. And things like that would just help them immediately get much more help from other people and putting them in a position where they could make decisions quickly and make them themselves. Like, so often I would find myself going to a meeting where I was the person at the right level in the organization to attend that particular meeting. I didn't have a particularly strong opinion on the answer there, or what needed to be taken into that room, but members of my team did. So to me, it was about me sometimes just having to be the voice of the team in that case. And so we would have a lot of collaborative conversations for me to understand their point of view and why and what the perspective I should take into the room is. And that to me was all about really me saying, I'm going to represent you, not I'm going to turn up and it's the Phil show. It's like, this is your view and I'm just taking it with me. And sadly, I always found it sad that I had to be essentially the representation sometimes. It's like, can't you just bring the person who actually knows all about this into the room? Instead, it had to be at the right level in the hierarchy to sit in those rooms. And heck, in fact, sometimes I was lucky enough to even get to skip a level up because I was my boss's right hand. And if he wasn't around, I got to turn up. And so that gave me, another level of influence. Yet still, I was mostly representing someone else's view because they were the people doing the work. They were the ones who I trusted. They were the ones who ultimately were empowered by me. Did they always make the decision I would make? No. Did I back them 100% on their decision? 99% of the time. Every once in a while, I'd look at it and say, that is just dumb. And then we'd have a conversation. But most of the time, it's like, I have no better information than you. The few times it was dumb was because I had information that they couldn't have, and therefore I could see from a different perspective. As soon as I could, if I could share that information, usually that sort of conversation would surface it, then we'd end up on the same page, in fact. But it was about, it kind of comes back to that word that's in the question of empowering. Like, sometimes the only way you can empower is by representing other people, but more wherever possible, bringing them into the room with you and backing them, being their sponsor, their supporter was a key part for me. I mean, product management departments tend not to actually really be a team. That's part of the challenge as well. There are a bunch of people who all do the same work, but on completely separate things, or at least completely separate parts of the product. And so when you're leading a department like that, you've got to actually create that team environment. If you want to have a true team, you've got to create the interdependency. You've got to get them collaborating. I remember as the team was growing, I started to hit a scaling problem. Like, I was running out of time for one-to-ones. And I was also finding the one-to-ones less effective because I had people turning up and saying, I've got this problem. And I'd look at them and say, the person who's got the solution is sat next to you. Why aren't you talking to them? It's because they were just a work group. They weren't really a team. And so, like, creating just simple structures, like stealing from the Agile playbook and having a daily stand-up for the department helps there. Like, okay, we'll all come together. What happened yesterday that we all need to know about? What are you focusing on today, and what help do you need? And then what I call office hours that followed on. 45 minutes where we're all available to help each other. And by knowing that we're all there to help each other, like maybe me and Keith went off and did something over here to deal with that problem, or Emmanuel and Priyan, two people in my team, went off and did something else over here, or I don't know, and Amir and Dominic went over and did something else. It created that helping environment across the team as well. And we ended up ultimately kind of adding also some responsibilities, like defining the roles to help to create that cross collaboration. I called it, for example, my 3 hats. Hat 1 was their portfolio, the thing that every product manager knows they own. Hat 2 being a speciality, like one person took cloud computing, we're going back a few years. One took mobile technology. I took ways of working and practice in product management. And then we had a thing we called the focus subject, where it's about growing our capabilities. One of my team wanted to learn about contract law and intellectual property. I couldn't think of anything more dull, but he was super enthusiastic about it. It's like, perfect, I'm going to pay for you to learn about this. And then every time there's a contract to be negotiated, I can skip being in that meeting because you can be there. But over the next 2 years, everything you learn, you need to teach to the rest of the team. And so if there's a contract negotiation in their product area, they and you are going to be there. You're going to be bringing the knowledge and they're going to be bringing the context. And together we'll get good outcomes. But just creating that collaboration was the foundation to me. Like just little mechanisms like that had a disproportionate effect.
If I just summarize everything that you've been saying, one word that pops into my head that comes to mind is encouragement. You encourage people to identify with the entire company, not just the little part that they were hired into. You encourage people to bring their knowledge in person to the meetings rather than typing through you. You encouraged some people who were asking you to show up with all the information to recognize that you weren't the one who was the smart person about this, that there was someone else, and that would make way more sense to bring them in than to have it all translate through you. You encouraged recognition within a team of all the ways they're collaborating already and how that's been helpful, which then encouraged more collaboration.
You said that much better than me. I think the one word I would overlay on top of that is intentional as well.
Yeah.
Actually making a choice and designing how you're going to do that encouragement and designing how you make those engagements work. That was key to it. Some of it went through experiments as well, though. Each of those mechanisms I talked about was an experiment that ran for a while. And if it didn't work, we tried something else. I was lucky that most of the first or second experiment I ran was super successful. But I was prepared to keep changing until we found the formula that worked.
Yes, I talk about everything in terms of tiny experiments. And because if it's tiny, then there's no fear in taking it. And if it's too scary to take, then there's always a smaller step, a tinier experiment we can make. And an experiment, because experiments don't have success or failure, they just give us data. So if it's tiny enough that I'm not scared to take it, and an experiment that is just going to give me data, that removes all the fear of doing something and seeing what happens. And even if it blows up, it's a small explosion.
There is such a thing as failure. It's just failing to learn. It's like, as long as you learned that this worked or didn't work, you succeeded. If you didn't take the learning, then that's the failure. That's to me the perspective, at least.
I'm glad to think about that.
But I guess one of your points there was that you're trying to take the fear away. You're trying to create more psychological safety, and therefore taking away the word failure can help there. I like to emphasize that we're doing an experiment to create some learning.
Yes. And so thinking through what the piece that's off here for me. So I agree. If we do something and we don't learn anything from it, and we recognize that, well, we didn't learn anything from that, then we still learned something. So there's still learning there. If we do a thing I think where my objection is, what's coming up for me that's wrong here is that we're always learning. We aren't always conscious that we're learning. If we do a thing, we don't consciously recognize what the outcome was, what we've learned from doing that. We might do that over and over and over and over. Some part of us still understands what's going on. And a lot of what I help people do is make those unconscious learnings conscious. Bring what's
and that comes back to that phrase intentionality to me. It's like,
yes.
I'm intentionally aiming to learn this. And if I don't learn that, then maybe I learned that I did the wrong experiment, or I learned. But if I don't derive the learning intentionally from it, then that's when I probably kept going down the wrong path.
Yes, intentionality always critical. And this is one reason that a key piece of the experiment for me is doing the reflection afterwards of, okay, what does this mean? What did I learn? Explicitly asking that, so that we always are looking at that, examining, and then how does that affect, what does that mean for what the next experiment might be? What other easy ways to get started in helping people feel safe and empowered would you suggest for people who are realizing that their environment is nothing about safety or empowerment, or maybe only a little, and they want to help encourage that to grow?
It's the really hard thing is to build relationships. You have to show vulnerability, but showing vulnerability is risky. You humans build relationships through kind of showing that little, just giving a little bit, and then getting it reciprocated. Someone else shows another little bit, which is why I like to bootstrap that by showing that little bit in a safe way for them, as an example. I don't want to go down the angle of the cliches of go to the pub, go out with people. Like, that can be also misconstrued. Like, it can be quite gender biasing as well. Like, going for a beer, two men is not misconstrued. If you go for a beer with a female colleague, that can be misconstrued. So then you start limiting the options, and you start coming down to going for a coffee, and it's like, but it feels like forced socializing then. And I don't think that helps. I generally feel like it comes down to creating the conditions of this, and modeling what great behavior looks like. You're modeling how to do these things. Like, show up and do it yourself as the leader. Don't expect other people to do it. Go first, I think, is the phrase that one of the big thought leaders uses. Like, model how you want people to show up in a way that makes it safe. Like, heck, fail in front of them yourself. Can sometimes be the easiest way. It's like, let them all roast you, and then cool, yeah, okay. Now let's go and let's now we've got that all dealt with, we can rip the band-aid off and move on. Show yourself to be human, really, I guess, is what's really behind that, because it is all about connecting on a human level. That's where I find is the most important part, and creating that environment that allows people to show up as fully imperfect humans.
I like this. This takes us back to where we were early on. Because anyone can show up to any meeting and say, I'm a little distracted today. If I appear to not be so engaged, I'm not as engaged as I usually am. I'll be better tomorrow. Or don't even have to say anything about where it's going to go. Just want you to know I'm not as engaged today.
There's a book that I I think it was a podcast a while ago I listened to. That was a parenting one about parenting and spousal relationships, you say. And there was a technique that was talked about how this person with their partner would basically say, "I'm on a 1 today," to kind of let their partner know that they are really low, they're not feeling motivated, they just haven't got it in them today. And if the partner said, "Well, I'm kind of on a 6, but okay, today's my day to pull it out of the pan and to carry it," and knowing that like there's going to be days where it goes the other direction, and that's okay, and kind of just having that some way, some code of being able to get it across that I'm down here, I'm asking for some help, and a simple numeric scale can be an even simpler way of than saying I'm not feeling good or whatever else, as a way of sort of saying, can you pull it out today and cover for me, and tomorrow it'll probably be the other way around, and I'll get you then. And knowing what that, just having that system, I think, is powerful.
Yes. Something similar I found to be really useful is to start meetings or conversations with this. Each person says one word that's true for them right then. This seems like it would be super scary because you're asking them to be super vulnerable, but everyone can do the socially acceptable thing of, I'm good.
Yeah.
And some people will be a little more vulnerable and say, I'm distracted. Some people will go all the way and say, my dog died this morning, I'm having a really hard day. And over time, everyone opens up a little more. Yep. And even if even while it's happening, even on that first time, it gives each person a little insight into whether they're a 1 or a 10 or somewhere in between.
Yep. I mean, that actually reminds me of how I behave in meetings. So in the old world where we were all in the same room, you'd go in, you'd sit down, you'd have a bit of chit chat at the start. And then when everyone arrived, you'd start the meeting. Now, in the virtual world, too many teams turn up and then sit there silently until everybody's there. I don't do that. I have the chit chat virtually. Because to me, it's no more uncomfortable someone arriving into the virtual room as it is them walking through a physical door that they join halfway through a conversation. But that simple, again, human interaction, or where you're not in that formal, right, we're in the meeting, we've got to follow the agenda, just helps build relationships and get everyone much more relaxed.
Yes, and it helps people remember that those are other living beings on the other side of all those little squares. In person, we feel their energy, we feel their presence, we know we're more aware that that's a human being. Virtually, there's another filter or many more filters in between, and it's harder to remember sometimes that still here on the other side of this moving 2D flat thing is a living human being who is hours different in time zone from I am at the end of his day where I'm starting mine, and isn't necessarily at the same level of energy or in the same place, or all sorts of things may be different for him than it is for me.
Yeah. And I think because I've been working this way so long, I'm so relaxed. Like, I remember working virtually when we didn't have cameras. And so like I got used to just interacting purely on voice. Now where I've got cameras, I've now reached a much more rich level of interaction than I got so used to, that it feels great for me. But I know for many, they've gone the opposite direction from all in person to losing the fidelity over the last 4 or 5 years. And yeah, it makes it more challenging.
Yes. And also less challenging for people who have a harder time being around people, whether that's being around people takes energy rather than gives it, or I feel awkward around people for any number of reasons, uh,
I
or I
mean,
just don't feel like being around people right now.
and you know what? Like, there's the interesting thing. We could probably start throwing in words like introvert and extrovert here, which get very vastly misused. Like, I'm very much an outgoing personality, like pretty gregarious, but I'm actually an introvert because being around people drains me. On one to one, I'm about level. On my own, my energy goes up. In a group, it drains me. I enjoy being drained. Like, I go and speak at events and this sort of thing, and I love it, and I'm a big character on the stage. And then I come home and I need my cave time. My wife's the opposite. She's a shy extrovert. She gets all of her energy from being around other people, but she's relatively quiet in the room. And so there's really a 2x2 there that most people are used to the stereotypical outgoing extrovert and shy introvert. Understanding, and that's one model and one way of looking at it, but like this, understanding the person and try, you can use some of these models to get an idea and then think, how do I adapt to showing up with them?
Absolutely. And those are all reasons that I'm stopping using introvert extrovert and talking about uh, the underlying, the more fine level details of what tend to get rolled up into those two terms are to gain energy or lose energy from being around people. Do you enjoy talking to people or not? I know extroverts who have to be around people to get energy and never want to talk with them. That they live their whole life in a coffee shop in their own little table, ignoring everyone else. That would be heaven. So there's always people around. They never have to talk to any of them. That would be horrible for me, and I suspect you.
I mean, I love to go and sit there for the buzz when I'm trying to write. It helps keep my brain stimulated, for example.
Yeah, in all these cases, we're using it very strategically and tactically, both. You know exactly what you're doing it. You know how long you can be there and still it be productive for you versus when it goes over the red line and now it's doing more damage than it's helping.
I mean, and I guess that brings us back to that first question of knowing yourself and kind of showing up as your true self. That knowledge of yourself takes years to refine. Like, I know my energy cycles. I know when I'm going to be productive and when I'm not going to be productive. Like, don't ask me to do thinking first thing in the morning. Everyone talks about don't check your email in the morning, or there's books about that. It's like, that's the perfect time for me to check email because my brain hasn't switched on yet. I am a true night owl. Like, 11 a.m., 11 p.m. till 1 a.m., that is my most productive time of any day ever. But I pay for it the next day because I then have to get up because I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and that makes it hard. If I didn't have a child, then I could shift my entire day and I'd be able to take advantage of that productivity. But recognizing when that energy cycle is for me and scheduling the right meetings at the right time with the right people helps me show up in the right way as well. But then you've got to also recognize that similar cycle for different people and try and find the happy medium as well.
Yes, there's always a way to bring our whole self into everything that we do in a way that is safe for us and for everyone else.
Just sometimes end up with a very complex matrix to work it out.
It could be very complex, oftentimes, yes. Even we're just looking out for ourselves.
Yeah.
Let alone bringing everyone else's complex matrix. Yeah, I guess quantum computing is going to make us all a piece of cake and AI is going to solve it all for us, right?
That's what they keep telling us.
I'll be amazed if that ever actually happens. I don't believe it.
There's a joke from many years ago that says, if we figure out the opposite gender, if anyone in one gender figures out the opposite gender fully, then the universe will spontaneously combust and recreate itself in a more complex form. And I think that's true. If AI ever does, or quantum computing ever does, then the same thing will happen.
That's pretty likely. I agree. We've spent a lot of time today, Phil, talking about how to help ourselves and our teammates and our people bring their whole self into everything that they do. What's the business value of doing this?
Better performance. Really, it's as simple as that. Teams with psychological safety, trust, higher diversity, particular cognitive diversity, perform better. They deliver better business outcomes because they are more creative. They find better paths to success. They collaborate better to find those paths. It's like it all just kind of snowballs together into we get more done better and faster. And yet it's exactly the things that people resist. Like when we go to a command and control style leadership, it's usually because we're in a wartime, like everything's going wrong. And so we go to those methods that strip away people's ability to turn up in their best self, strip away their ability to have safety and empowerment, because we want to move fast and we want to get stuff done, and because we've just got to do it, which actually generally leads to worse outcomes. But it's scary because there's less control. And, I have to admit, I'm a bit of a megalomaniac at heart, if I go back to my real core psychology. So making that choice to say, I'm going to trust that it's going to be a better outcome, and yet I'm not going to control that outcome. That's hard. It's a leap of faith that takes a maturity that takes a long time to build.
How can people for whom this is super hard, or even a little bit hard, just probably most of us, how can they get started on loosening that control a little bit?
It all goes back to, I would say, what we talked about earlier, little experiments. Choose an area where you don't have to have complete control, where you're happy to let someone else take the reins, where you're happy for the team to make a decision or an individual to make a decision. Just do it. And don't worry too much about the outcome either, and just worry about seeing how that individual grows and how much their confidence goes up, and focus on coaching that individual to make a better outcome instead of telling them how to get there. Like, most of leadership in reality is coaching, or good leadership. It's like it's helping people be better at what they're doing, not telling them how to do it. Or at least it is in the modern knowledge worker world where you and I operate. If we're operating in a manufacturing plant where the knowledge isn't in the people who are doing a lot of the work, then it's a subtly different environment. But even then, there's probably a lot of knowledge in the people on the line who actually see better ways of doing things. So just engaging and having that conversation, sometimes finding the experiment through the conversation with people, like asking them where they see things that could be done differently or better. And if they're passionate about it, they'll show you. And if they're passionate about it, they will put the work in to do it well. And so your risk goes through the floor as well. So it's choosing those experiments in a way that maybe has lower consequences in the short term, and therefore you're allowing people to learn through that experimentation. But just, it ultimately all comes back to you've got to make a choice to do it. It's not going to happen if you don't.
We're back to that intentionality again, the thread through this whole conversation.
Indeed. And I kind of reflect as I think at the end here. Intentionality is something that came in later in my career. A lot of it was bumbling through and guessing and making mistakes, and finally realizing if I actually was intentional, I could design this and make it more effective. But before that, I didn't know. I didn't have the guidance in many cases to form that perspective. So I guess there's also a little bit of don't beat yourself up if you just look out on the bad way or a good way. Like that's also part of the human experience.
Wait, it's just outcomes. Give us data. It's not good or bad. Okay. How do you help people find their way through all the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm that seems to be life these days?
Fundamentally, as a coach, I act as a sparring partner. I help people think. Like I spend my time talking to people. I bring a structure, I bring a framework. I just bring another brain to engage with. Like I've literally just come out of a coaching session with a CPTO before we came on this call, and we were talking about various things around how to get his team more engaged on changing some ways of working. And so we sparred about, well, how would this work? How would that work? How do you think, or how do you think this and that would work? What's the real challenge you're trying to overcome? What are you worried about? What could go wrong? And just kind of going around those loops a few times. And usually by the end of one of those lots of conversations, there's like 2 or 3 epiphanies that have come out. It's like, yeah, this is the thing to try. This is the thing to try. This is absolutely the thing to try. And then we can think about how to prioritize them. A lot of it comes down to context. Like I can be a sparring partner, but the person I work with has so much more contextual information than I have because they're working in the business, whereas I'm external. So really I'm there to ask the hard questions, sometimes to ask the dumb questions as well, to help them understand what's going on. And that usually ends up going down, how are things going to change? What's the uncertainty? What's the risk, etc. And so that's the subject matter of the conversations usually.
So we might say that you're helping them gain a broader perspective.
If we all go all the way back to when you introduced me, in that introduction, I help them think clearer, make powerful decisions, and take action that drive outcomes. And the thinking clearer is the majority of the coaching activity because they're all senior people. They can make decisions once they've got the clarity of thinking.
For people who would like to engage with you more on these topics, maybe use some of that clarity inducing that you bring in such great quantities, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So finding me on LinkedIn would be one approach. It's just Phil Hornby, or forproductpeople.com would be the other place. That's my business name. Think of it as for dummies, but we will replace it with product people. It's not the number. Or you could also, if you wanted just to listen in, I also have a YouTube channel that I co-host called talkingroadmaps.com, where we talk to lots of people about lots of different subjects. Predominantly road mapping historically. We're just about to do our second series, which is all about product operations. So listen in there, and you'll hear lots of different bits of wisdom from me and other people.
That's great. And I'll have all those links in the show notes. What, Phil, would you like to leave our audience with today?
I think if I was to distill down what we've talked about, it's create the environment for intentional help through connecting on a truly human level. I think that's the thread that's gone through it all. So that's what's distilled in my own mind.
Thank you, Phil, for a great conversation today. Really enjoyed it.
Likewise, been absolute pleasure.
It's been great. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. Phil and I are so curious to know what helps you bring more intentionality to the relationships you build. Thanks, and have a great day.